And that's the secret to get a very big and epic sound. Hi, I'm Mattias and I'm here today with the ILIO to make some music with the awesome software synth Ember. I've always been in love with the sound of tape, the warmth and the saturation. I still remember recording our first album in 1995 with my band Embracing, and we were recording straight to a reel-to-reel tape. And behind the mixing console we had Jens Kidman and Thomas Hake of Meshuggah that made it quite unforgettable. And what I really love about tape is the imperfections, the saturation and the drive. They're not just sonic flavors, they're memories. And I really feel that the Ember synth captures the vibe, the imperfections and the saturation of tape perfectly. So let's take Ember synth for a spin. Okay, so this is the Ember synth by Jam Audio, and as you can hear, we already have a preset on fire here. And that's one of the things that really stood out to me the first time I tried the Ember synth, that it sounds very organic and alive out of the box, very analog, if you will. And one of the panels here in the interface, called the circuit panel, is what really makes the Ember synth stand out from other synths on the market. And at the top here, the first panel is called Wear, then we have a stability panel. And if you go into the Wear panel, you can see we have aging and rust. And that's a few parameters that will affect the Ember synth on a circuit level. So it's not just going to be an effect that you apply on top of oscillators. It's actually going to affect how the oscillators behave. So let's first take a listen to this sound when we have the age, rust and the stability all at the lowest setting here. And this is typically the sound you get from an ordinary synth. Very stable and predictable. We go to the Wear tab and we introduce a little bit of aging and a little bit of rust. So with the rust we get a little bit of fizz in the top end. And with the aging, we get more unstable oscillators. And when we set this to a moderate setting like this, we have a sound that suddenly comes alive. Let's try the stability tab. So we have the detuning set to 0. And as we bump the detuning, we're obviously going to get more out of tune or detuned oscillators. And then instability. And while the tune seems to be more focused on controlling the detuning of the oscillators, the instability affects multiple parameters like timing, pitch and other circuit characteristics. But the same here, we can just set it to like a moderate setting and we get a little bit of instability, detuning and the good stuff, the good analogs, warm stuff. And that's the secret to get a very big and epic sound. Okay, so how about we use this sound for a little composition? So the chef always prepares and we have a little bit of drums here. So let's layer down some chords on top of this with the Ember synth. So we're going to need a little bit of metronome here for the first take. And next up we can just copy the last part here, the last 4 chords, repeat these. Okay, so we already touched on why I like the Ember user interface, and that we have a quite simplistic user interface, but there's a lot of powerful features. And another panel I really enjoy in the Ember synth is this master panel, where we can control the width and the tone of the sound with just a simple XY pad. And the tone is basically a low pass and high pass filter. So as soon as we push this upwards towards a higher percentage, it's gonna be like a high-passed sound, and as we lower this, it's gonna be a low-passed sound. So that's gonna be a nice control to just place the sound more accurately within the mix without using external EQ. So if we feel that the sound is maybe a little bit too bass-heavy, we can just bump the tone here, so we get a thinner sound. Maybe something like that. Because we're probably gonna add a bass below this pluck pad sound, and we don't want a lot of low end in this pad when we're gonna add a bass. So it's just super easy to place your sounds using these master controls. Yeah, so below the width and tone master effect control, we also have time and intensity. Time will control the timing of the envelopes and some effects, so you can get more like a sustain notes or create more of a pluck sound with a lower time percentage. And the intensity will control the intensity of the effects, but also the intensity of the circuit parameters. Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that we can see these like master controls as predefined macros to control multiple parameters of the Ember synth with just simple controls. Okay, so next up we're gonna need some kind of bass sound, and there's of course a whole range of great presets in the Ember synth. You have everything from brass presets, keys, leads, pads, pluck sounds, everything's in here, but we're gonna go actually to the best of folder, and we have this bass sub-regiment for the Lo-Fi O. And we can hear there's a lot of stuff going on in this preset too. We have this really fat low end and some like a vinyl crackle going on top. So this is a really great time to take a look at the effects in Ember synth. So we have this crackle effect, and the type is set to vinyl, and let's try some of these other types. And then there's a chorus effect. We have a ripple effect, which is gonna sound like a kind of gate effect. Which further makes the sound more like unstable. And then there's the compressor, which is going to be great for a bass sound. And then we have the heat, which is our extra saturation device. But it's important to note that the oscillators themselves in here, they have a summing circuit for saturation. So depending on how you set the levels of the different oscillators, it's going to affect the saturation you get from the oscillator section already. But I think that this preset only uses the sub oscillator. We have all these other, the square, the sawtooth, and the triangle is set to 0%. To note that you can see already here in the oscilloscope, if we activate the heat, you can see how that affects the tone. And we can visually see that in the oscilloscope. Which is really sweet. And next up we have the echo and then the space, but we'll take a look at these more closely when we add the lead sound later on. And below all these effects we can also see a drift and an arpeggiator. Now the drift here is really interesting because it will induce even more like organic movement to the sound. As we can see here we have different oscillation types, if you will. We have a mountain here which is gonna create more like drastic changes in the oscillation. And then there's tape which is gonna be like all over the place, a little bit more like chaotic. And we can attach this drift oscillator to different parameters. And on this base it's controlling the tuning. So you can hear when it sets to a tape with this look more like chaotic movements, it sounds quite unstable. So it's probably better to have like a more slowly moving and more like predictable oscillation. So that's our bass, and let's add that to our arrangement as soon as the drum kicks in. Sweet. Nice. Okay, so next up we're gonna add a B part. So maybe we could add some kind of arpeggio in the background. So let's call up the default patch here, which in itself is quite a cool patch. But yeah, so it has the echo, and maybe we can add some space, a little bit of reverb, to get a little space in there. And we're also going to head down here to the arpeggiator. Gonna activate the arpeggiator, and it's set to 8 notes. But maybe we could add 16 notes instead, and yeah, we can control and add some octaves. And set it to default, and there's also the ability to change different patterns. And we can also maybe set it to shuffle, or maybe set it to random, and we're gonna decrease the chance, and that means it's gonna be less likely that some of these arpeggiated notes is audible. So depending on if you're after unpredictable results, you will add some chance and maybe use the random arpeggiator. But if you're after some more kind of predictable result, we're going to use the up and just to make the chance quite high, like maybe 90% or something. And I'm going to set the octaves to off. And we're going to filter the sound a little bit like that. Just quickly quantize these. Maybe just a little bit more filtered, so we do that with automation like this. So that's the ARP track, and now we're gonna add a lead track. And for the lead we're gonna use the default patch, but we're gonna change the sawtooth into a pulse wave. And maybe add a little bit of chorus. So we get like a more huge sound, but we need to reduce the volume quite a bit. And for the lead sound, maybe we can look at the space and see how the reverb sound. So that's the wide one. Let's try the void. Ooh, ethereal. That kind of suits this sound. We're also going to change the sensitivity on the synth so we get more response from the velocity of the MIDI keyboard. Yeah, so let's lay down a melody. Yeah, beautiful. So that's how easy it is to use the Ember synth to come up with great sounding patches just out of the box here, and instantly get some inspiration to create maybe synthwave or some other kind of chill music. Right, so if you want to learn more, check out the Ember synth at ILIO.com.